What? I got up out of the bed so that he was no longer looming over me. My bed was just a mattress on the floor, so that put me way down and him way up. I chuckled to myself as I stood. So much good that did, he still loomed over me. He was a big man. "We are now your duties," he responded. I looked down at the baby girl. She was so beautiful. Man, this was pulling at my heartstrings. Damn, he had found my one weakness, the little ones. More than anything in life, I had always wanted to have children. Only God knows how much. But just like everything good in my life, the chance of ever bearing a child had been snatched away from me, violently and painfully. I had nightmares of babies I would never hold. You want me to look after your baby?" I asked, looking back up at Dawid, who was watching me way too intentionally. I frowned. He was studying me, and I didn't like that. I turned and went to my dresser drawer, opening it to remove some clothes. Yeah, her and her daddy. I looked at him through the mirror. Do I look like the type that sit around playing house? He bent down and picked up his daughter in his arms. "You'll let her starve?" he asked. I turned around from the dresser with my clothes in hand. I smiled at the little heart. Well, not her. I looked back at him and my smile vanished. "I'm not feeding you." His mouth fell open in feigned horror. "You'll let me starve?" "Brother, I'm sure there is many a young lady here that will feed you all you want. You're gonna have to get this crazy idea of me and you out of your head, because it's never gonna happen. I promise you." A smile that made me feel very uncomfortable spread across his handsome face. "Well, that's gonna be a shame, because if you don't feed me, then I won't eat. You shouldn't make promises you can't keep." I walked past him to the bathroom. When I got to the door, I turned to look back at him, and I returned his smile. "Well, I guess I can show you better than I can tell you." Then I went into the bathroom, shutting and locking the door behind me. Quickly, I took a shower, being mindful of the hot water I used. Our water came from the mountains. We were not in fear of running out of it. However, hot water was very limited. My little 50-gallon solar-powered hot water tank worked hard to heat the water. And because the whole compound ran on solar, the floors underneath this one were limited to one hot water tank per 2 apartments. So needless to say, hot water was treated with care around here. I thought about the time before the sun flare had hit the earth, shutting down all electronics, and I do mean all. We had taken so many things for granted back then. Hot water, lights, music, grocery stores. After the flare, man had to go back to a time we had long forgotten. A time when we lived simply. Of course, there were third world countries that always lived that way. Many missions took me into places that made our compound today look like a luxury. Still, most of the American people had been used to gorging themselves with food. There used to be a time when one had got so full that they would just throw their leftovers in the garbage. How have times changed? Food was scarce and thinning by the day. Thanks to my Belle, we had a decent-sized farm here. She raised chicken for eggs and occasionally meat, and grew enough veggies to feed us all. But we ate our portion and not an ounce more. My Belle's garden was one of the reasons the Turk and his band of inbreds constantly tried to knock down our gates. The other reason I won't even discuss. It was too ludicrous to even give it the time of thought. After I finished my shower, I opened the big peach-colored scarf and began to wrap it around my body. I owned an array of scarves in all colors. I could wrap them 50 different ways, designing 50 different outfits with them. I used safety pins instead of ties so that there was no accidental unravelings. Today I chose to wrap it in what I called my Empress wrap. This was one of my favorite wraps because it crossed between my legs, making pants that resembled Thai fisherman pants. I absolutely love those. When I was done, I quickly braided my hair in one long French braid down my back. I didn't like leaving Dawid in my place alone. He was probably rambling through my stuff. However, when I opened the door, I was surprised to see his big body laid across my bed. He had kicked off his boots and he was out cold. Little Yafa sat on the bed next to him, sucking her thumb, fingering one of his locks she held in her hand in her little lap. When I came out, she looked up at me. I smiled at her, coming to my knees by the mattress in front of her. "Did your daddy go to sleep and leave you up all by yourself?" I asked. She didn't speak. In fact, she just stared at me. There was something different about her. She didn't have the demeanor of a normal 2-year-old. The fact that she just sat here while her daddy slept spoke volumes. A normal 2-year-old would be in everything. Then a thought crossed my mind. Was she there when her mother was murdered? Did that bastard John kill her mother in front of her? I balled up my fist. Son of a bitch! I recognized the look in her eyes. Trauma. My heart wept for her. No child should have to go through that kind of trauma. I felt an instant kinship with her. It was as if an invisible bond had fallen around us both. "Are you hungry?" I asked. Nothing. She just stared at me. I held out my hands for her, and surprisingly, she dropped her father's lock, took her thumb out her mouth, and held up her arms for me. Oh, that made me feel like $1,000,000. I scooped her up in my arms, and oh, y'all, she just laid her head on my shoulder. It felt good. Her touch did not hurt. I was in love. I walked to my little kitchen area and put on a pot of water on my little electric eye for tea. She laid her head on my shoulder the whole time watching, and the whole time I talked to her. "I'm so sorry about your mama, dear heart. A bad man took my mama away too. The world is full of bad men. That's why you got to learn how to fight, so you can protect yourself against them bad men. D gonna teach you how to do that, precious heart. I'm gonna teach you how to hurt anybody that try to hurt you." I made us both a cup of tea. I added a few stevia leaves to hers and put it in the fridge to cool a bit. When it was cool enough, I sat down with her, still in my lap, at my little round table. "This is moringa tea. It is very good for you. It makes you strong from the inside out." I held it to her mouth and she took a sip. I saw her swallowing, trying to determine if she liked it or not. She put her little lips to the cup and took another sip. I guess she liked it. I put her cup down and I took a sip of my own. "While your daddy sleep, we can go down and help my Belle in the garden. Would you like that?" She put her thumb back in her mouth. I take that as a yes. Before I left, I looked down at the sleepy man in my bed, contemplating kicking him out at gunpoint. But this little heart had already experienced enough trauma. I would just have to wait till she took a nap. "What do we have here?" my Belle said, where she was on her knees pulling weeds from around the kale greens. "This is Yafa," I said, looking down at the brown-haired angel I held in my arms. "Isn't she beautiful?" She stood easily to her feet. It never ceased to amaze me how well she got around for her age. I chuckled. She was the reason folks thought I was 20 years old instead of 40. My Belle's herbs did wonders for the body. It kept it looking young. But my spirit was worn, old, and broken down. Her herbs can do nothing about that. "Did you come to help Mom Belle in the garden?" she said, rubbing her fingers on the baby's soft cheek. "You probably do a lot better than these lazy folks I got helping me around here right now." I looked around the acre or so of land that my belle had turned into her garden space. There were several people lending a hand, a few new faces. Who are the new people? I asked. Dawid assigned them to help me. He said the garden will now be worked in shifts, since the number of people have grown here, so I will have a crew of 30 people at a time. I don't know how we're going to sustain all these folks. It's over 400 people, plus our folks. Our food storage will be depleted by the end of the week. She picked up my hand and patted it. Oh, you of little faith. She smiled at me. That boy says everything's gonna be okay, and that Yah will provide, and I believe him. I frowned. So it's Yah now? I asked her. Last week it was Jesus. She nodded. Child, I ain't too old to learn. Pearl over there been telling me about it all morning. She pointed to an older woman that wore a beautiful scarf wrapped around her head. When she saw me looking at her, she stood and came to us. Shalom, Bot. It is so good to finally meet you. She wrapped both Yafa and I in a hug. I stiffened, closing my eyes as pain shot through my body. My belle gently grabbed her arm and unwrapped it from around me. Pearl, honey, Dee here, she don't like to be touched much, she told her. Pearl looked at me, frowning slightly, before she nodded, her frown turning into a smile. Well, that's okay, she said. It is still an honor to meet you. We all have heard so much about you. There ain't nothing special about me, I told her, feeling uncomfortable around the new people. You see, I really wasn't a people person at all. Sure there is. This whole place is blessed by Yah. Child, don't you know that? She gestured around the garden. The fact that you can grow food here in itself is a testament of that. How so? I asked. She chuckled. Well, we've come a long way. I and my son have been traveling with Dawid since Nevada. We were some of the first folks to join him. Together we have traveled through Utah, Colorado, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, back to Missouri, and then here to Arkansas. So it's safe to say, I have seen a lot. And baby, trust me when I tell you, food growing out the ground is a rare sight indeed. That radiation has shown no mercy. It's one of the reasons our numbers have grown. Yah leads Dawid to places that will provide for us, just like he led him here. Yeah, well, I think maybe you're giving this place too much credit. Food grows here because we're high up in the Ozarks, I told her. She shook her head. And I think you're not giving this place enough credit. Yah has blessed this mountain, child, because you're here. I broke eye contact with her as I leaned down and kissed Yafa's brown head. If only she knew how cursed my life has been, she wouldn't dare call it blessed. So, where are you guys headed? Why are you traveling from state to state? I asked, changing the uncomfortable conversation. She exhaled, taking a seat. Child, I really don't know. Dawid moves when Yah tell him to move, and stay when Yah tell him to stay. He say Yah's guiding him east. She shrugged. I don't know what's east, but I believe in Yah and Yehoshua, and I believe that Dawid is of them, so I follow. Pearl here has been telling me all about Yah and Yehoshua, and baby, I believed, my belle said. I smiled at her, happy for her. I truly was. Where's that granddaughter of yours? I asked. You know Cheyenne. With all these strapping men walking around, my guess will be out there somewhere. It was nice meeting you, Miss Pearl, I told the elderly woman. And I'll be back to put some time in a little later, I told my belle. Then I turned with the baby still in my arms and made my way back into the compound. My belle's garden is in the back, tucked between the storage building and the mountains. That made it easy to defend. So in order to get to our food, one would have to make it through our gates and the storage building. When I walked through the lobby, it was bustling with activity. I could feel all eyes on me as I walked through, probably because I was carrying their master's baby in my arms. Well, it's about time you remembered your responsibilities and came to check and see about all the changes this invader is making here. Baxter spat as soon as I walked into Bill, the blacksmith's place. All 15 of my men were there. I ignored Baxter. "Morning, boys," I said instead. They all nodded. I could see the questions burning in their eyes. "Whose baby is that? And why are you carrying it around with you?" Baxter continued. Okay, I had had enough. I reached inside my wrap to my thigh holster and I pulled out my 9. Still holding this precious heart in one hand, I pointed the 9 at Baxter with the other. "Say one more thing," I told him. "Say one more thing and you're going to be joining your father." He swallowed visibly, but wisely, he remained quiet. I put my Jericho 941 back into its holster. I looked at Simon. He was older than I, and I respected his opinion, not to mention the fact that I trusted him with my life. I had been trying to get him to lead here from the very beginning, but he refused, always saying he couldn't do as good a job as I did. But I begged to differ. I had known Simon for the majority of my life. He and I had both been pulled out of Julie by Father, both of us facing life sentences for murder. Father had broken both of our minds and reconstructed them to serve his purpose. We were his way into the hidden power structure that ran this world. He had taken us from prison and brought us back here, his secret lab that not even the government he worked for knew about. And then he spent the next 10 years of our life putting us under extreme psychological torture, breaking our minds while training our bodies to be lethal weapons. When he was done, he presented us to the United States government as if we were machines. That earned him his name. After they saw us, they implemented his program for a very selected few in their ongoing quest to make the ultimate super soldier. Anyway, although Simon and I were both trained to be solo operatives, being chosen to go on many missions alone, we were also paired up many times in the field. He and I were working a mission together in Bosnia when the flare hit. When we finally made it back to the States, I had instantly went in search for my Belle, because I had promised her when I was a little girl, before the night my mother was murdered, that I would never forget her, and I didn't. Simon had decided to stay with me because he didn't have anyone to look for. When we got back to my old neighborhood, we found my Belle and Cheyenne starving in my Belle's basement. With Simon's help, I was able to get them both out of there safely. Back then, there wasn't nearly as many blood fiends as there is now, but still, they were a big threat. When the 4 of us showed up here, because where else would we go? Father had trained us to always return home. When we got here, it was to find both he and Baxter Jr. living like fat cats, while the rest of the world was burning. I hid my hate for Father to get past the gates. But as soon as we got settled in, I put a bullet in his head. And I was getting ready to put one in Baxter Jr.'s head as well. But he cried like a baby, begging us to spare his life. I looked over at him. I wish I had gone with my first mind. "Simon, what do you think of this new situation?" I asked as I rocked Yafa in my arms. I think she had fallen asleep. It had been a minute since she moved and her little hand lay lax against my arm. Simon sat on the bench, his big legs spread wide. He used a knife to doodle in the wooden bench. When I asked my question, he sat up straighter. "I don't know, Dee. They took most of our weapons, and we don't really have the manpower to defeat them. They outnumber us 8-1. He chuckled. "And then even if they didn't, their leader can take us all in a matter of minutes. His skill is like nothing I have ever seen before." "How did you determine that?" I asked. He looked up at me, his gaze piercing. "Because I saw him easily defeat the best fighter I have ever known. He defeated you, Dee, without even throwing one blow. He chuckled again. Hell, he didn't even take off his coat. I exhaled. Yeah, that was pretty impressive. Whose is he? Who's putting out soldiers like that? I asked. All morning I have been raking my brain. I know for a fact he wasn't the U.S. Our government wished they could produce soldiers like that. Simon shook his head. I don't know. I have never seen the like. I nodded. Plus, he continued, you know what they say about the Hebrews. Our people believe. He looked out into the courtyard at the compound that was now littered with tents and new faces. They believe that we've been saved. Saved from what? Baxter spat. We were doing just fine before he showed up. By he, I assumed he meant Dawid. I cut my eyes at him, and he swallowed again and shut his flap. He felt like we were doing good, but I haven't told a soul outside of Simon of my fear. I didn't know how much longer we would be able to keep those out that wanted in. Eventually, we would run out of ammo and gasoline. Our truck was only halfway full now. Once we ran low on both of those, things were going to get real hard. So what do you suggest we do? I asked Simon. He shrugged. What can we do? D, ain't none of us strong enough to kick Dawid out. So hell, you can't beat him. Join him. That's my vote. Now wait just 1 minute. I'm not gonna just stand around here and watch him suck up what's mine, Baxter spat. He cleared his throat, looking around. I mean, ours. We cannot just give up and let him win. D, why don't you just shoot him in the head and be done with it? He asked. I ignored Baxter and addressed my other men. Simon has wise counsel. These men are stronger than us. Don't fight against them. Your families need you to survive. And there is no doubt in my mind that Dawid will kill us if we don't follow what he says. I looked at Baxter when I said that. Be helpful. Show them how the compound works. Lend a hand. Become one of them. And maybe some of these sorrows will pass us by as well. I turned to leave. I am so glad Simon said what he said. I wanted my people to become Dawid's. That way, I know they will be taken care of when I leave this horrible place. And no matter what nonsense Dawid had gotten in his head, I was leaving. Nothing but death can keep me from it.